So I got my hands on the brand new Sigma 56mm 1.4 DC-DN lens for Sony APS-C camera bodies, and oh my gosh, this lens is amazing. Now, this line of Sigma lenses, the DC-DN line, is meant for Sony APS-C camera bodies. So technically, you can use this lens on a full-frame camera like the Sony a7 III, but that will automatically go into crop mode since this is an APS-C lens. So ideally, this lens is meant to be paired with cameras like the Sony a6500, which I have right now, or the a6300, or even a6000. So super pumped about it, but enough of the chat shit. Let's put this thing to the test. Since we don't have any models right now, I'm actually gonna use Tyler as my model as he's filming this video. And so that looks pretty good right there. Let's see what this looks like. Ooh, man, that looks nice. Here, 1, 2, and... Woo! Wow, man. That looks incredible. I mean, the way the bokeh renders in the background, it just looks absolutely beautiful. So now I'm gonna shoot this Starbucks cup, and I'm gonna shoot it with the sun as my backlight and see how it does. Not sponsored by Starbucks, but Starbucks, if you are listening. All right, here we go. Oh man, okay, here we go. Dang, dude, looks magical. Holy moly. Dude, look at this. I don't know if you can see it. It might be too glary, but it looks phenomenal. Okay, let's see. Let's shoot maybe a tree to see how sharp this lens is, and hopefully we can capture all the ridges and all the little details of the tree with this lens. So let's go give it a shot. Here we go. That looks pretty good, man. Oh, good gosh. For those of you really hating on the a6500 because it's an old camera, this camera still rocks it. It's so good. So that was photography. Very impressed so far. It just takes some really pretty images. And so photography, I think we're set. This is great for photography. Let's do some 4K video. Ooh. So I was a dummy. I didn't really bring an ND filter to really utilize the f1.4 aperture. And so we're just gonna film in 4K, and my aperture will be f6.3 ISO 100, and the picture profile will be PP2 using Color Mode Pro. Okay, here we go. All right, I'm just gonna film over here. And man, even at f6.3, it's really good. Nice. And then Tyler, go ahead, drop the camera. That looks pretty good. And I'm just hand holding this thing. Man, this is good. I can hand hold all day. So I really want to use the f1.4 aperture on this lens, and so we're gonna cheat, and we're gonna film this at f1.4, but with a high shutter speed, just for testing purposes. I wouldn't normally do this, but you know, things. Okay, here we go. Still filming in 4K. Nice, dude. That looks really good. Okay, so we're gonna test out the autofocus performance of the lens. So I'm going to move the camera and then pan it back to Tyler's face. So here we go. Let's go to the background. Nice. Very cool. So I do notice something. If the sun is hitting the lens, there's this weird green-red rainbow streak. Looks like the Bifrost. I haven't really seen that before in any other Sigma lens, but it's kind of distracting. Okay, so we shot some photos and we shot some videos, and the performance of the Sigma 56mm is pretty good. You won't get as fast an autofocus performance as you would a native Sony lens, but you know, that's kind of obvious. If you're using a Sony camera, it makes sense to use a Sony native lens to get optimal performance. But for a third-party lens lenses like the Sigma 56mm, it's pretty good. And with every lens, there's gonna be pros and cons, but in this instance, the quality that this lens produces is pretty stellar, and I think it's worth it. So other than the image quality, one of my favorite things about this lens is how lightweight and how small it is. I mean, look at it. It's tiny. It's probably slightly taller than the Sigma 30mm, but it really reminds me of the Canon Nifty 50, the f1.8 version. It's probably roughly the same weight, and so if you're familiar with that lens, then you have a good idea of what the 56mm is like. Another cool thing I like about this lens is that it has a really smooth focus ring, so I'm able to do some really smooth rack focusing, and it doesn't do that weird jittery stop like the Sigma 30mm has. It's pretty smooth, just like the Sigma 16mm, if not smoother. The cool thing about the Sony a6500 is that it has a feature called clear image zoom, meaning that you can zoom in on practically any lens. So right now I'm filming Tyler at the 56mm focal length or 84mm full frame equivalent, and I'm actually going to do clear image zoom, and check this out. How awesome is that? So if you use the clear image zoom feature on the a6500 with a lens like the 56mm, it'll give you two focal lengths, one at 56mm and one at, well, what's double that? 112mm, or full frame equivalent 168. Gotta love the a6500, so good. So a couple things I don't like about this lens. I really don't like that Bifrost rainbow lens flare problem that this lens produces. I mean, even with a slight angle, with the sun pointing towards the lens, you see it prominently. It's like the streak of rainbow colors, and it's pretty darn distracting. And so I don't know if that's that can be fixed through a firmware update, but that is one thing I don't like about that lens. But other than that, I absolutely love the lens, and I love using it with my Sony a6500. In fact, just like the Sigma 16mm, it kind of brings new life to this camera, even though this camera is a couple of years old. And I've been pretty blown away with the images I was able to get from this lens and this camera. And so if you're thinking about getting this lens, then definitely get it. I highly recommend it. In fact, if you can complete the Sigma trifecta, which is a term I totally made up, which consists of the Sigma 30mm 1.4, the Sigma 16mm 1.4, and the 56mm 1.4. That is like your equivalent to the Infinity Stones. Man, a bunch of Marvel-related metaphors going on here. And so, my nerds, those are my thoughts on the Sigma 56mm. It is an incredible, superb lens, and I think you should get it, especially if you have a Sony a6500, 6300, or a6000. Well, let me pass the question off to you. What do you think based on the video footage that you've seen and the photos that you saw in this video? Would you get this lens? Well, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but I'm out of here. It's getting really cold, and I'm really hungry. But if you like this video, thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next video. Woo!